All right. Well, thank you so much for everyone that's joined. And, we're really excited to be able to bring this workshop discussion to you guys. I know Anna and I have spoken offline about the fact that it's been a huge year. And so it feels really fitting to be able to bring this conversation to a year that feels like there's been lots of bumps and amazing things. And, kind of the AI conversation continues to really sort of, catch people by surprise. And where everything is headed. The world, has got some amazing things going on and maybe some less amazing things. So we felt really enthusiastic about bringing this sort of conversation. But we'll give an opportunity for Anna to introduce herself as well, and then I'll just give those who haven't met me, a little bit of a short intro as well. But Anna, over to you.
Thank you, Ren, and hello, everyone, and especially to those that I haven't yet met. I know there are some familiar faces, but then a lot of new people as well. So looking forward to connecting with you today in this session. So as a little bit of background, Ren and I also, used to work together at one of the big banks here in Australia. And has since obviously gone down different paths. So for me, over the past few years, I've been running my practice and I'm really working with organizations all around how do we help them to thrive. And with that, for me, that is how do we ensure our employees are engaged and at their best? They're equipped with resilient skills so they can navigate the pressure and the challenges. They're also well, so they feel good and function well. And of course, as a result of that, they're productive, they perform, over the long term at a really sustainable level. So that's what lights me up doing that sort of work. And I do that through speaking and workshops and also with coaching as well.
Thanks, Anna. It does feel like a real privilege to be having this conversation. Anna and I started our relationship and our connection down at 800 Burke Street. We were introduced to one another. I can't remember what brought us together. I think people said that we just needed to meet, as with so many storylines start like that. And anyway, we got to talking and realized that we had shared passion around this concept of helping other humans. And, Anna was in a leadership role at the time, and so was I. And I've also since gone on to start something of my own. And I actually was on a podcast this morning with a beautiful woman, Hillary from America, and she's got this relaunch podcast. And she was asking me about my relaunch story. And so I felt really inspired by the ability to talk about the fact that Maxme was started after 30 years in corporate, where I really feel like my story was defined by the humans that I worked with, and the work that we did together and the amazing things that we achieved. And most of all, it was very rarely in this sort of in the widgets that we were producing, even though they're really important, but it was the relationships in which we delivered them in, and the growth that we did together as teams. And so I was really inspired about being able to set up a company of my own to be able to do that globally. And so Maxme brings the promise of scaled human skill development to all corners of the earth. And I'm becoming more and more excited about the fact that we're getting to play with Australian businesses and now with their counterparts in either India or the Philippines, because we've launched in both spaces. And to start to bring teams cross geography together and to be able to work really well and collaborate and smash those goals and results through this element of human skills, which is missing. There's definitely a gap. And so being able to close that gap really quickly at scale effectively so that teams can just get on and do the really great work together and solve customer problems, have fun together, all those things. Anyway, so that's what I do. That's what Anna does. And today we just want to engage in a conversation with you around probably in three parts. First of all, what does it look like to sort of not run out of puff, even though we've run out of puff, because everyone, and this time of year, I don't feel like it's really that much different to any other year before it. You start to sort of feel that heaviness of a full year served. So what does it look like to have that strong finish? And then that importance of having a break. Most of us will choose to take a break, or sometimes we're kind of encouraged to or forced to, depends on what language you like to use, but most organizations have a, a shutdown period. Maxme is no different to that, because people need a break. And then finally, setting up and thinking about the new year, and almost this concept of becoming the CEO of yourself. Often as leaders, we're asked to put together 90-day plans, or, and that's not just for the sake of 90-day plans. It's about how do we sort of really think about what we want to achieve and just set some goals and achieve it. So we want to talk about that in terms of the personal context. Anna, anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I think we've got a lot to get through over the, what's going to be less than an hour now. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good list for people, hopefully to cover and then walk away with some actions and strategies to try themselves.
Fantastic. And I do, like, Anna and I love dialogue. So if you want to ask something along the way, please feel free to put your hand up or put something in the chat. We'll be monitoring that. Like, we definitely love, a two-way conversation. There'll be plenty of time to ask questions though as well. So let's get going. This concept of, how to finish the year strong. And I know, Anna, you've recently been talking a lot about this sort of concept of energy and energy management and time management and where you put your energy and time. So I might kick off with your thoughts around this concept, what it sort of means to you, how you've seen it play out in real life and in an effective way.
A good one to start with, Ren. So I think at this point of the year, like you said, the conversations I'm having with so many people are just, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. I've got so much to get through before the end of the year. And I guess when I look at that and I think about, all right, we've kind of got, I don't know, it might be 4 to 6 weeks, depending on when you're finishing up. We can't kind of change that end date. That's pretty fixed around, the date that we actually are going to hopefully go and have that break. So what we know is that we can't get more time. So there's no way that we can actually add any more time, given we've got kind of that final moment to hit, what might be the end of the quarter or end of the year actions for us. So for me, what I like to think about is actually, well, if time is kind of finite, what's something that is in my control? So it's going a lot back to, those principles that came from Julian Rodder and Stephen Covey around, well, if I can't control something, what is it that I can control? And so for me, a lot of what I've been talking about with people is how do we try and control our energy? So energy is absolutely something that we can control. And when we think about it, energy is one of those incredible resources that we have where if something like the time is there, really what we need to be thinking about is how much energy are we bringing to a situation? Because I think all of us can think about moments where we might actually have time. So we might be given a lot of time to do something like a day or a week or a month, but we might not have the energy to actually get that thing done. So I know I've got lots of examples where I put things at the bottom of my own to-do list because I'm just not energized by them. So something for people to think about is like, well, if time is sort of stuck or finite, how do we actually create more energy? And energy is one of those incredible things where we can increase it, but we need to think about, well, what does energize us? And that's going to be different for every single person. So for me, I'm someone that gets really energized by my relationships. So I've made sure that I factor into my days, a bit like what was happening in the chat, those connections with other people. So I can be more lit up and energized to then go and do the work. I know also for me, exercise is a really big one. So I try and, fit exercise into the start of my days, particularly if I do have quite an intense day where there might be a bit of delivery. I want to try and get that exercise in so I do, get to experience all those amazing endorphins as well. There's a lot of other things that energize people. So again, like we'd love you to keep putting them into the chat, but what are those things that light you up and give you energy? And how can you ensure that over the next, if it's 4 to 6 weeks towards the end of the year, that you're prioritizing them so you do have the energy to get through the work when you can't actually control the time that's left?
I really love that, Anna, because I think the other thing, and I'm sort of thinking a lot about what you're saying, and the next thing that I wanted to ask you, which is the use of strengths. because I know when we talk about strengths, when we do our work with participants around top strengths and lesser strengths and, what are they? We talk about using strengths to task craft and relationship craft. So actually think about how you can show up in your work and in your relationships through the lens of what you're good at and what lights you up and what gets you into flow, staying away from those things that energy drain you if possible, whilst being aware of them. So I love that you've actually introduced that also with this concept of, we've got to get through the stuff we've got to get through. And sometimes it's mandatory stuff, even though we don't want to do it. And the closing off of things tends to be so heavy on us every year. And I think, I sort of certainly have found myself feeling a similar way when I'm about to go on holiday as well. It's like the very time I'm about to go on a holiday, even if it's mid-year, where I'm supposed to be sort of easing into it, I'm always rushing right till the last minute. And I'm like, pulling my hair out, is everything going to get done? And then I'm sort of exhausted going into the holiday. So it's this concept of, kind of work out the things that have to be done, that are urgent and important on that matrix. And then if you really don't want to do it, or you're sort of dreading it as to some extent, but it has to be done, what else can you put in your daily routine that will energize you right before you sort of can then get going and get started on that task? I think that's really some really great feedback and advice. But on the topic of strengths, and I know, again, you and I both share, zeal around this concept of POS-psych. You've in fact done a master's of positive psychology at Melbourne. Just your point of view on strengths use as it pertains to this, finishing the year strong.
Strengths are absolutely a way that we can energize ourselves. And I very much align to the idea that strengths, yes, is something that we perform well, but they're also things that light us up. So that actually differs perhaps from other understandings around what a strength is. So sometimes we just think strengths are things that we do really well, but all of you will have things that you do really well in your lives. But when you actually think about using them, you might find that they really drain you. And that's actually not a strength. So that's what we would probably call more like a learned behavior. And that very much aligns with the definition of strengths out of the CAP Institute, which comes out of London. So a strength should be something that, yes, you do well, but it absolutely lights you up. And so for people that aren't familiar with their strengths, again, a really great exercise is to think about, what are the things that you're doing in your job when you are in that state of flow? So, those times where you're doing something and all of a sudden you look up and maybe an hour or two has gone by because you've been so absorbed in that task. That typically is going to be when you're using your strength, using those internal resources that you have that are actually you at your best. So again, when we're thinking about, all right, how do we get more energy? We want to be spending more time actually using our strengths, particularly when we are facing difficult tasks or challenges, because that's when we can actually bring on that state of flow. What people tend to find as well is when they work out what those strengths are, there might be some that are actually lying there dormant. So Ren, perhaps my challenge to you when you were thinking about, everything you've got to get done tomorrow before you get on that plane, is there a strength that you have that you think, well, hang on, I haven't used that or leveraged that to try and make sure that I can get through everything I need to get done?
Yeah, I love
Putting
that.
you
Well,
on
I
the
mean,
spot
one of
there.
my top 5 strengths is hope. So I'm definitely hopeful that I'm going to, and look, I'm going to get on the plane, right? But I'm just hopeful that I'll get through everything I need to. And then even then, like, the reality is, I know I've always, I'm a self-declared workaholic, right? So I've always put quite a high bar for myself, trying to get everything done. And inevitably, some stuff doesn't get done. And you know what? The world doesn't end as a result of that. So I feel like it's that balance between really giving things a good go and being ambitious for something, and then knowing that, kind of if something doesn't get finished or as much as I want it to get finished, then, either I'm going to have to find a way to sort of defer it and do it later, or ask someone else to sort of help me with it. There's so many different things that are available to us. Like, we so get caught up and get in our own head around this perceived level bar that we've set. Like, I know that for myself, right? But, you know, for me, I've learnt through the work that I've done in the strength space, which was new work to me. I'd never really thought about it before I worked at NAB. And during my time at NAB, I was given opportunities to go above and beyond my role and get involved in things. You know, I got involved in something called the Leadership Ambassador Program. And then I got some development through the Executive Coaching Association. So that was a bonus. And then I learned about strengths, and I've become a zealot since. But again, I've learned to do things through my strengths. It wasn't something, to your point, Anna, like, I kind of knew it, but I didn't necessarily think about those things that lit me up. And now that I know those things, I really very consciously try and embed that into my daily, if not weekly, practice, to really think about it and reflect on it and create those habits. So that's really helped me, definitely. And I know the work that we do, we help others, because they too, like you and I, haven't really thought about it. Anyway, so I don't know if there's any questions or any other thoughts from anyone, you know, on the call around the sorts of things that they are doing to kind of really make sure that they finish the year strong. But, you know, for us, for Anna and I both, I think it's a where are you putting your energy? How are you using your strengths? How are you being kind to yourself? Not setting unreasonable, you know, unachievable targets that, you know, kind of, you know, don't serve anyone well. So I'll just pause for any questions. Otherwise, we can continue on to the next part of the conversation.
I've just got an observation
Thanks,
around
Liz.
that, which is sometimes I think, especially when you get really busy, it is easy, as you've just been talking about, to forget about your strengths, but also to look at what others are doing and how they are actually, you know, doing that run up or run down to the end of the year, and think, oh my God, that's what they're doing, I should be doing the same thing, rather than actually really reflecting on where your own strengths are. It's easy to get pulled into different ways and think, I need to be doing that. I just, yeah, that your discussion just made me think that as well.
I really love that, Melissa, and I'm keen to get your thoughts as well, Anna, in a sec. But I just that concept of FOMO is so real in today's society. Like, I feel like so many things that we take action on or covet or want is because, like, it's all in our face all the time, right? Like, we're seeing all of these things and people are doing and achieving, and like, we're thinking, oh my God, like, why aren't I doing that or achieving that? And then we go into this spiral of I'm not good enough, and what are my weaknesses and how I can make them into strengths. I don't know, like, you know, that human spiral. But to your point, you know, kind of everyone else is taken. So what would it really look like to be disciplined and just be yourself? Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have to still be aware and do the work to sort of turn up as the best version of yourself and really do the hard work around the development of some of these skills that we're all talking about. But it's kind of like, you know, that works for them. It doesn't necessarily work for me. Having said that, though, and I'm definitely a visual learner. So throughout my career, I've been most inspired by what other people have been. Like, I do get inspired by what people say or do, and it's normally through observation. And so I have unashamedly stolen things from other people, going, oh, wow, I really like what they're doing. I'm going to try that for myself. But it sort of, and later in life, it's never been, oh my God, if I don't do that, I'm somehow a failure. But definitely I'm picking up these things that I like in other people, the way they present or what they're doing, and, you know, kind of trying to learn from that and implement that. That definitely has worked for me as well. But thank you for sparking that. That's definitely. Anna, your thoughts?
Oh, very similar, you know, and I echo that around, you know, it is all very individual around what lights us up. And I think that's a really good self-awareness exercise to do that and think, well, actually, just because that person's doing this thing, that actually doesn't drain me, or that might drain me or might not light me up. So yes, there can be, you know, inspiration from others, but it could also be yeah, that's not actually something that works for me. So I think it's just as much as thinking about what I need to do, as much as thinking of what I don't want to do as well. So yeah, that's a great awareness exercise around, yeah, what truly lights me up versus what doesn't.
Nice. Any other comments before we move on? All right. Well, pretty please take a break. Like, really, let's just please, to some extent, and it looks different for different people. Like, I hate it when people start to really judge me around, oh, what do you mean you're going to have your phone with you? Well, like, at the end of the day, that's what I want to do. And that, for me, is kind of my version of whatever it looks like to take a break. So I really, this time of year, I find a little bit sort of like, I don't know who to share with that I'm actually got my phone on, right? It's like, no, switch it off. Well, actually, that doesn't work for me. So I guess reality is just like what we talked about before. What works for you? And we know each other by now, right? Like, we're old enough and ugly enough now to know what works for us in terms of taking a break, and whatever that is, please do that. So, and I'm keen on your thoughts around this concept of, I know for me, before I can take a break, I kind of have to have a bit of a cleanse, and this kind of, all right, let's just ease into this sort of off, whatever off looks like for you, with the reflection exercise. It's a learned behavior for me to stop and reflect. I haven't always been good at that because I run a million miles an hour, but I know I need to do that. So this concept of reflecting on the year before you can really kind of ease into the break, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love it, Ren, and it's something that I've definitely adopted into sort of my ongoing practice. So I try and do it even if it's like not weekly, monthly, quarterly, looking back on, well, what's actually happened? Because we live at such a fast pace, so often we neglect to actually pause and go, well, how am I going, or how did that go? And I know that's, very common within workplaces. You might just keep moving from one project to the next, or you just keep moving through the quarters without properly doing that reflection and taking those learnings forward. So I love it. I definitely do it at the end of the year as well, a big sort of wrap up. And I'll look at, sort of all the things that have been done. Because again, if we're looking back at the 12 months, it's going to be a lot. There's going to be a long list of things that we have done. Sometimes people get to the end of the year, though, and that negativity bias kicks in, and we start to think about, oh, gosh, I didn't do all those things that I said I was going to do. I'm such a failure. I'm sure a lot of people will have that kind of mindset going on of like, oh, I thought I was going to do this. I thought I'd be at this position and I'm not. Gosh, need to do better next year. So know that that's normal, because that's that negativity bias coming in, where we start to look at what we haven't achieved versus what we had. So I love Dan Sullivan's prompt here, which is all about, focus on the gain, not the gap. So don't be hard on yourself. I've got a really great framework that I love to use for these reflection moments. It's something that I kind of have in my back pocket. I use it in coaching conversations. People use it in team meetings. They use it in post, implementation reviews, all those sorts of things. And it's called the learning loop. So I think we've got a slide for that. So this is one that I'd love people to have a go at as well. It was developed by some of my colleagues, Dr. Michelle McQuaid, who I know Ren's very familiar with, and Beck Melville as well. And I find this just a really simple one, but it's really handy. I'll take you through why I in particular like it. So it starts at the top, and the first thing it asks you is, well, what did you do? So what have you gone and done, let's say, over the past 12 months? What did you try? And this is where you can list out all the things that you did. And at this point, you don't need to be doing any analysis of, did they go well or not? Just what did you do? Then we move into the assessment phase, and we start to look at first, because we want to go from a strengths-based approach, we look at, well, what went well? Okay, so what actually went well with some of those things that we tried? Then we start to look at the struggles. Okay, well, what didn't go so well? Where did I struggle? What did I try that didn't go as well as it could? But we don't end there. And the next question is the most powerful one, which is, well, what did you learn from those struggles or from those things that went well? That is how we strengthen the growth mindset. That many of you will be familiar with that concept, by looking at what the learnings are. Because if you don't look at the learnings, you miss a huge opportunity to then help shape out, well, what do you want to go and do next? Okay. So what did you learn, even through the knockbacks, the setbacks, all the things that didn't go well? And then even from the things that did go well, what did you learn? And then what you want to start to think about is like, well, are there some tweaks that need to be made? Are there some new things I want to add? Are there some things that I don't want to take forward? Like, what am I going to focus on next? So I Absolutely love this one. As I said, you can use it in so many different contexts, but this is what I simply do myself. I write it out. I have it in my practice planner, and I use that to then inform, all right, well, what do I need to go do for the next month, quarter, or obviously in this case, the next 12 months as well.
That's so helpful. And I mean, I really like this because I've used something very similar in continuous improvement cycles, or agile ways of working sort of hangs off something very similar. It's that iterative nature to the way that we drive change, whether it's personal change or project change or whatever. Actually, if we can break it down into cycles of value where, you know, we're aware at all times about what we're doing, particularly if we're sort of doing out of comfort zone things, like we're in the learning zone. So we're probably somewhere we've never been before, and particularly in complex systems and cause and effect is not understood. That's really where we've really got to focus on and catch ourselves reflecting, so that we're not picking up the things that are happening or the signs and symbols that if we're not focused in on it, we'll miss. And it's a missed opportunity to sort of connect with yourself, to give yourself a high five, to give yourself a pat on the back, all that kind of stuff. You know, I've worked with so many people that, I don't know what it is, they just want to sit in this kind of self-loathing. No, but hang on a second, I want to talk about the stuff that's not working well. And I want to talk about the stuff where on my weaknesses. And again, it's back to that negativity bias and that striving for survival. We want to survive at all costs, and we want to get rid of all of the negative things in our life so we will survive, you know, that prehistoric mindset. But this sort of stuff, it allows us to really refocus and get back to that positive cycle. I love Michelle McQuaid's work, and yeah, actually some of her stuff is in our stuff, which is awesome. It feels like a nice nexus, given that she and I used to do some work together when I was at NAB. So anyway, I'll pause there for any questions or reflections on this practice.
I see Belinda pop one in, especially what you will try next. A reminder that personal progress, life is a journey, and growth improvement won't always be linear. I love that, B. Yeah, that's so important. And that's it. We're always learning. And I think that's the best way to look at things. I use this one with some of the teenagers in my house. You know, they come home from a netball game and a football game, and I go, "Oh, how'd you go?" You know, they go, "Oh, we lost." I go, "No, you didn't. What did you learn?" And sometimes I get some very disgruntled responses back. Sometimes I learned not to let people put, you know, soccer balls through the goals. And I'm like, excellent. So let's not do that next time then. So yeah, it can be used in a range of different contexts as well, but it's a good one.
You know, and Anna, I just on that one, because I definitely want to hear from others as well. I've recently been helping one of my kids through, you know, a tough relationship issue. And I found myself wanting to move her along out of it because I felt discomfort with her discomfort. She was really sad and upset and going through a very traumatic time. And, you know, the mother in me just wanted it to all be better and for her to feel good. But I had to catch myself giving her time to actually sit in the discomfort of that as well. Like I really, really had to kind of train myself on the things that I train others on, which is, hang on a second, just allow yourself to sit with the discomfort. Like feel it, acknowledge it, you know, that whole name it to tame it kind of thing. But then do you know what I mean? So the only thing I would build on with you, and only because I've literally just recently been going through it very personally and deeply, you know, you never feel it as deeply as when you feel it with your kids, is that kind of, you know, sit with the discomfort, take the time you need, but don't get stuck in there in that vortex, because that was what was happening. That inability to lift from it, that sort of wallowing a little bit. And it's how do we then, as leaders, as mothers, as coaches, as mentors, as sisters, brothers, whatever, help others to move from it, right? And out of it. This framework is so helpful for something like that. I'm actually going to share it with her. Yeah. Any thoughts from anyone? I wouldn't mind just finishing off the take a break thing. Any other thoughts on this kind of concept of before you sort of move into break mode to decompress and reflect? Because I mean, if we wait for the new year, it leaves us, doesn't it? Like it's never as more powerful than when it's fresh in your mind. And so Anna and I think we've both encouraged just before you can sort of feel like you can take that break, have this little bit of reflection.
Melissa's
Yeah.
popped into the chat some wise words from her 5-year-old niece when she was learning to surf, and she said, I fell off a lot, but that's okay because I'm still learning. I feel like because we are adults, we don't feel like we can say we are still learning. You know what's really interesting, Alice, is that your 5-year-old niece is already learning this stuff at school. So I had a very similar example with my niece where she asked me to go and play Frisbee. And I said, oh, I'm not very good at that. And she turned around and she said, you're not very good at that yet, Auntie Anna. And I was like, hang on, where have you been? And she's like, I'm learning about the growth mindset. And so, as you've pointed out, our kids and this next generation are learning these concepts that we sort of missed. And that's why, obviously, there's a lot of emphasis on the workplaces to learn them because of that importance. But yeah, so sometimes we learn from our kids or the younger generation about things that, you know, we hopefully should know as well. So I love that story.
And I'm with you on that. And actually, two things I'd love to add. First of all, the research will tell us that I think it's like 93% of 3 to 5-year-olds are likely to ask why, engage in fun play, not take things too seriously, kind of just put themselves out there and see what life brings them, right? And they, you know, by the time you get to 18, I think it's like 2% of people are likely to ask why and engage in play. And, you know, again, you know, be really curious and open and not take things too seriously. So there's something in that, I think, as well, which is that growth mindset and that ability to learn and ask why and be curious and accept failure in a way that a 3 to 5-year-old would. Like, what happens to us? How do we get conditioned to not do that? Why? You know, in our workplaces, we talk about having a learning culture, but the minute that someone is in a learning position, i.e. something hasn't gone right, like all hell breaks loose, right? So we talk about it, but we don't actually live it. I think that that's so critical to really acknowledge that. And as leaders or as individual contributors, like how are we contributing to that? And then therefore, what can we do to sort of bring back that curiosity, that learning, because that's all we got really in the end. Yeah.
It's a good point. And also thinking about goal setting when I talk to groups about strengthening the growth mindset. Like it's not something you can just go and think. There is like an action around that. And so I also challenge people that, you know, often we set KPIs and performance goals, but growth mindset people actually set learning goals. So something for people to think about going into 2025 is like, what do you want to learn? And you can choose anything. It doesn't just have to be workplace related. This says to you and says to your mind that you can improve your abilities. So I've worked with people that might want to learn Vietnamese, or they want to learn how to cook, or they want to learn guitar, or learn how to garden, or anything like that. But that is already telling your brain that you can improve your abilities, which is part of that growth mindset. So something else for people to consider in 2025 might be like, what do you want to learn? What do you want to learn? Ren, anything you want to learn?
Oh, look, absolutely, I'm going to cover that in a second. But I think just by using that language, what we're role modeling is the belief that there is, you know, you want to push yourself, right? Go to places you haven't been before. What are the new frontiers? Because we know the name of the game. And I've been doing so much in this space in the last 3 months in particular, in ways I didn't expect, which is the human side of AI change. And like, I couldn't be happier, because as someone who's done a lot of business transformation, the change space is where we fail, and why 70% of business transformation fails is because we fail to do the human side of things. So I'm really excited about the work Maxme is doing in this space. But, you know, at the end of the day, when you declare it a learning environment and then you start the symbols, like you actually do it, not just say it, people push themselves out of their comfort zone, and they're more likely to then put their ideas in and innovate. Like that's where innovation happens. So it's so powerful. I love that language, Anna, and I'm actually going to use that with my team as well. And what do I want to learn? Well, actually, look, I've been delaying a few bits and pieces on my own personal growth and development, because the last 4 years has been so manic and so crazy. And so I've always been curious around learning another language. So I actually speak 2 languages. I speak English and I speak Russian. But there's a couple of languages like Italian. My husband's Italian, and I would love to be able to speak Italian. I understand it, even though his relatives speak very fast. I do understand it, but I actually want to be able to communicate with them. And we have a plan to get to Italy probably in the next year or 2, depending on how things go. So I'd love to, next time I go to Italy, not just be able to laugh along, but to be able to actually communicate. And so this year I would love to get a much better grasp of Italian. I don't think my husband's going to do the same with Russian, but I'm going to do it for Italian. Yeah. Thanks for the question, though.
I just love it.
Maybe I'll get started in my break. All right. So just, you know, to sort of round off the have a break, please have a break, which is also this just resting. Like, what does it look like to rest your mind, you know, back to the little, you know, brain that's, you know, in meditation mode. What does that look like to actually rest, to think about kind of bringing that peace back to us, whatever that looks like for you. I know I've got a little bit of a breathing exercise a little bit later in the deck, but to really rest your mind, rest your body. You know, I this year had a bit of a health scare. I know it sounds pathetic to sort of, you know, that being the catalyst, but, you know, I went to get a blood test and I thought I was low in iron, but actually what the blood test served up, which I didn't expect, is that you know, the words pre-diabetic came out of the doctor's mouth. Now I wasn't, you know, I wasn't in the red, I was in the amber, yada, yada, whatever, but it was really the wake-up call I needed around my diet and the choices that I was making. You know, I was working long hours, I was eating badly, I was drinking, not excessively, don't worry anyone, but you know, you know, there were certain things that I was doing. I was traveling a lot to India. I love Indian food. I love all the white carbohydrates, you know, bring it on. And, you know, I was heaping up the plate because they love a buffet in India. So, you know, I was doing all of the things that kind of were not serving me well. And I've really been very particular, particularly going into this break. And, you know, we're hoping for, and all, thank God, the signs are looking at a big 2025. And so I can't continue to sustain even on 2024's pace. So what does it look like to really take a break my way, but to take a break and to sort of bring back that stamina to myself to set up physically, because I'm not getting any younger, that's for sure, into next year. But yeah, just sort of keen to hear from a few of you of how you're planning to do it. Like, what does it look like for you to take a break and rest and recuperate? Have you thought about it? What are you going to do?
I'm going to jump in there, Ren. And I loved your point earlier about what does the break look like for you, and yours was with the, you know, having the phone with you.
Yep.
I'm going to be very intentional about information detox. So my mantra for the time I'm taking out is actually bored is the new black. So I want to get really bored. I want to be so bored because I'm not being stimulated by things around me, like my phone and books and podcasts and academic papers and all these things that get me distracted. So I'm actually going to be really intentional about being bored, because I'm finding that I really want to just create space to think. So, you know, get over the overwhelm and overload, and actually allow my brain just to think and wander and be curious, because there's a lot going in and I need to create space to kind of churn through it. So Ren, you'll have your phone and mine will be like thrown into the ocean or something, I think, for part of it. Because yeah, I'm going to try and challenge myself to have a bit of a detox, and we'll see how we go. I'll report back.
I love it. And I look forward to hearing about how you went. But yeah, fantastic. And I think, you know, I'd love to hear from some others, but, you know, conscious that I really do want to just cover this concept of the 90-day plan, the personal 90-day plan, and then open for questions. So does anyone have anything else that they wanted to sort of check in on and inspire us with how they're going to rest and recuperate?
I think B was similar with deleting the social apps from the phone. So that's good. Or maybe buying a dumb phone. Like that was something someone said to me the other day. We don't need to have smartphones. We can have dumb ones.
Can I just
was
say,
pretty
no word
funny.
of a lie, I found one of the old flip phones the other day because I was looking for a costume and I have it in the costume box that I used to, keep for the kids. And it was one of those Motorola flip phones. And I was like, oh my God, I can't even remember when I used this. Like, wow. And they're making a comeback, right? Nokia 2110, Belinda Wall. So hot and expensive, right? Like the vintage phones, they're all the rage. Fantastic. Fantastic.
Mm.
All right. Well, look, let's just quickly cover that concept of the 90-day plan and very much into this sort of once you've done the reflection, keep the notes, obviously, the learnings. What do I want to do a bit differently? What do I want to try next? And Anna's point around, what are the learning goals rather than the KPIs? I think that, yeah, so powerful. And so, how do you then look at the planning associated with that? We do quite a bit around time management with people because if you're not naturally wired to sort of goal set, plan, and then try and stay on the plan, whether it be through visual management or whatever, a quarter kind of really runs by. And then again, we get into that spiral of, oh, I didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve. And, oh, how, quarter of the year's gone by and, oh, whatever. So it's like, how do you use the sort of reflections that you take out of, this end of year practice and then sit down when you're refreshed, rest and recuperated and go, okay, what does the next 90 days look like? And not stuff it like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. No. What are the 3 things that you want to learn about and achieve? Like 3 things. And if I get through those 3 things, amazing. I'll choose the next 3 things, but just 3 things. Anna, your thoughts?
Yeah, couldn't agree more again, Ren. Yeah, I love thinking like, what's kind of your top 2 to 3 things that you want to achieve in a quarter that are going to have the biggest impact long term on your work or your life, like almost taking them to that point. And then obviously knowing that we're going to have shorter term goals that we have to hit off each day or each week. But yeah, definitely thinking about like what's the 2 to 3 that you want to achieve every quarter. That are some of those bigger ones. I also really like at the start of the year thinking about like what's my best possible self. So there's an excellent exercise out there. Some of you may be across it and know it and have done it yourself. But it asks us to think about like what is me at my best. Sometimes it asks you to look at it, maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years in advance. And that actually then helps you break down, well, what does 2025 look like? Or what does the quarter look like? So again, as you maybe doing a bit of reflection, but then a bit of planning for next year, think about what does 2025 look like at your best if everything went as well as it could. And this is where, we've been having this discussion about children, but this is where, you've really got to challenge yourself on like, dream like a child would. Like everything, there's no money constraints, there's no time constraints, everything goes as well as it could. What would that look like for you? And that can be a really great way to start kind of that big picture thinking to then break it down and look at, okay, if you're looking at the next 5 to 10 years, then what does that look like in year 1 being 2025? And then what would that look like for each of the quarters as well? It's a great exercise to actually boost that hope and optimism that we spoke about. But yeah, it allows us to just be really free in that thinking around what does it look like from relationships? What does it look like from my hobbies, my health, my learning and development, my career? All those sorts of things you can picture and just be free with it and open. So that's something I love too, that helps me go big and then actually start to drill down into then what does that look like, annually, quarterly, and then monthly even.
Yeah, I love that. Dream like you were a child. So my 3-year-old niece just had a birthday the other day and she had this massive pink Barbie crown, like epic Barbie crown. And I was looking at it going, gosh, I never had a Barbie crown like that. I'd love to have you know what I mean? But, that was her everything. And she was sitting there so proud and she had this beautiful pink Barbie crown on, like amazing. What is that for you? Like, what does an amazing, awesome 2025 look like? And dream big, why not? But then in the habit of breaking it down to say, well, if that's the dream, what are the little incremental steps that I need to take? And what does the first 90 days look like? you know, around that. And then, you know, kind of set those measurements. Don't be afraid to hold yourself to account. And, you know, what do I need to achieve month 1, month 2, month 3 to sort of be on track, to feel like I'm achieving, to get that confidence, because of course confidence breeds more confidence, and stick to that. You know, put up, yeah, thanks, absolutely, be the CEO of life, and put up that visual management. Like, don't then put it into the top drawer, which is what happens for most people. Put up a mini Kanban board for yourself. Like, you know, what have I got to do to achieve this goal, and what is in progress? Don't have 15 things in progress, have 3 things in progress. You know, is there anything blocking me from achieving that thing that I need to achieve, and what are they, so I can keep track of them? And then what am I achieving? What am I actually nailing and finishing and closing, and put them in there and look at them and admire them and be proud of yourself, right? I mean, I know that sounds weird. Like, what do you mean? Like, I have to project manage my life and my goals? Yes, actually, it actually works. So, you know, simple little Kanban boards up at your desk or wherever you look every day, and those positive manifestations off the back of that, it actually does. Like, it helps you get there.
What was the saying? If you fail to plan,
You
you
plan
plan
to
to
fail.
fail. So
That's it.
yes,
Exactly.
you've got to have
It's
that
so
plan
boring.
in
Like,
place.
it's so, people roll their eyes like, really? You're stifling my creativity here, Ren. Okay, listen, let's get the plan going. Yeah, you can be creative within the plan. Let's go crazy. So
Yeah.
anyway, all right. Well, look, that's kind of what we wanted to cover. Obviously, I just sort of wanted to also, Anna and I are big into breathing, and you know, that kind of personal wellness that comes from just bringing enough oxygen into your body. So if you haven't already come across this concept of box breathing, it's the breathing that the Navy SEALs do when they go into really highly stressful situations. And, you know, most of us don't actually take in, physiologically, we don't take in enough oxygen into our body because we shallow breathe. And so, you know, it's so important to at least on a daily basis stop and at least do 3 of these 16 count repetitions to really just bring in enough oxygen and bring that mindfulness and that calm that comes when you breathe properly. And it's literally just, you know, in for 4 slowly, then hold for 4 slowly, then out for 4 slowly, and hold for 4, and just do that 3 times. And make sure you're breathing from your stomach or your diaphragm rather than your chest, which is more the shallow breathing. You know, we won't do it now, but, you know, such a simple practice that brings euphoria, sometimes even makes you feel lightheaded because you're taking in more oxygen than you used to, but it really, really gives you that presence and that mindfulness. If you haven't already practiced it, it's super, super helpful. Okay, well, what's on your mind? Any questions? We've got, you know, kind of just under 10 minutes for some questions. Anything that any of you are curious about that we didn't cover, or any personal pump up stories that we could all be, you know, benefit from and be inspired by? No questions.
I'll jump in quickly. I know I've already dropped in a lot to the chat, but I'd be interested to know if anyone else has ever experienced kind of a bit of an overwhelm during New Year resolution season. I often find that time of year quite almost quite daunting to sort of stare down another barrel of another 12 months. Like, I feel like there's a bit of pressure out there in terms of new year, new you know, what are you going to do this year? How are you going to be better? How are you going to hit the next targets? What are your goals? Like, there's a lot of kind of, I guess, noise out there, and this is from marketing land as well, in terms of, you know, an expectation on yourself at the start of a new year. Yeah, interested to know how New Year or how January sits with people generally.
And I think I'd like to extend that as well, B, to say, you know, if we're leaders of things or of people, how do we sort of help our team not feel that overwhelm as well? Like that sort of conditioning to sort of, you know, sort of put a lot of pressure, which often doesn't help. And then, you know, those of us that feel anxiety just get more anxious. And then we kind of start the year in that anxious state and not in that learning state. So what are some of the things we can do, not only for ourselves, of course, but if we're leaders of other people and, you know, their potential is in our hands, what else can we do? Keen for some thoughts. And I don't know if you've got any thoughts, but yeah, definitely keen for some thoughts from the peeps on the call. Leanne, so put this
Leanne's
on
popped a
repeat. Yeah,
good one in
go.
there. New Year's, same me, because I'm already fabulous. And I love that, Leanne.
Woo!
That's awesome. And I
Yeah.
think that's it. I think part of that going forward is building on what's already good and making it great. So it doesn't always have to be change and improvements. It can actually just be a reminder of, hey, this is already going well. This is already good. Let's not forget it and just keep doing it. So I love that, Leanne. I think that's just, so important. And it's part of that strengths-based approach where we are going back to, what we're good and making sure that we strengthen it and keep it top of mind so we don't forget about it as well. So it's a great one. And there's a lot of people agreeing with that as well. I think also something else that I'd add is probably considering that language, like, even just asking yourself, like, what does good look like? What's good to me? Like, again, not doing that comparison-itis of, oh, everyone else is doing these big things, but just coming back to kind of, what's your ideal as well? And I love that one. Alice said, how do you want to feel? Like, it's all coming back to you and your motivations, because that's the thing about behavior change. Nothing's going to change, positive or otherwise, unless you want to do it. So it can't be influenced by anyone else. It's what you want to do, and that can be as small or as big as you like. And that's why resolutions typically don't work, because people make them, and it's about someone else or what someone else.
You want to be
wants
completely
do.
different, which is like, what's wrong with who you are? I think that's, and the point you make, and it's such a pertinent one, is holding the mirror up and seeing the goodness. I think, again, that negativity bias, we look out for the things that are threatening our survival. And so we want to see all the negative things because we don't want anything to be negative. But in that, doing that, we fail to see what everybody else is seeing. And they're like looking at us as if we're weird, going, how can you not see that about yourself? And you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're such a liar. Why are you blowing my trumpet? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why don't we see the things in ourselves, those positive things, and then just want to do more of that? Why not? Adrienne, here we did an exercise in our team in January with everyone choosing a word for the year, recognizing many were about challenge ahead, moving house, health issues, renovations. Words weren't always being meant about having the strength to meet the challenge. Yeah, exactly, right? They embrace the things that are ahead with, with passion or with bravery or whatever that takes, Adrienne. It's such a good point made. The reality, right, of what would it take. I love that. That's so positive. That's really, really positive, but not fluffy, right? It's not like, the unicorns and bubblegum. It's like, what's the reality of what's ahead and how we're going to smash it? How we're going to be resilient? How we're going to find a way? That's awesome. Yeah, B, you're right. Very, very real. Very real. All right. Well, that's us at time. Anna, any final thoughts from you as we close?
No, I mean, as always, I love hearing what people take away. So if you can pop that into the chat or send an email after, just around what are those key insights, but also maybe like what are some actions that you want to take. What we know is that unless things are done within 72 hours, they don't get done. So if you want a bit of that commitment, accountability, I'm sure Ren and I would be more than happy to receive an email or a chat or a message from each of you as to how you've gone. But yeah, I wish you all the best over the coming weeks, which typically are a bit crazy, a bit silly. But yes, do whatever you need to be at your best during that time as well.
Yeah, and I'll echo that as well, Anna. Big year with lots and lots of learnings, and how can we take those back to Adrienne's like sentiment of like another big year. I don't want it to be small. I want it to be even bigger. So what is it going to take to really smash it and get there? And what goodness do we already have, and what can we do even better, as I like to say. So thanks everyone for joining. Safe and happy downtime, whatever that looks like for you. Great ending. Enjoy, whatever the silly season brings. And looking forward to reconnecting in 2025. Have a good one. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anna or Adrian, do you have a question? I can see you both there. Maybe not.
I might, here we go. Just remove Hannah.
Maybe
Yeah.
just stop recording.
Oh yeah, that's a good point actually. Good point.